believe myself to be a classic example of what's going on here, what's been going on with the economy in the last about 5 years with the so-called gig economy. And the gig economy, just to define it, is basically as more and more people get paid to do temporary tasks, temporary jobs, they get hired just for temporary uh, duties for a limited amount of time, and then they get let go. Uh, I've been experiencing that. I have experienced that myself for the last few years, and I have left some full employment job just because it's sometimes sickening. It has been sickening the way that employees get treated, including myself, the way that the system is set up, where the benefits are meager and it's pathetic, where the treatment is quite draconian and racist and very, very prejudiced and discriminating, where the pay is unfair and quite low in many occasions for the job and task that you perform. And this is talking about full-time employment as far as my experience has gone, even in the past years. And I have quit those jobs where I've detected injustices, racism, and discrimination. I have left those jobs after giving them plenty of opportunity for change, and I have gone or jumped on board into the gig economy that's been growing in popularity more and more. There are advantages and disadvantages to that. Of course, you have a lot more freedom, a lot more flexibility as far as your time, what you do with your time. That's when you're employed in the gig economy as a contractor, subcontractor, temp employee, temp worker. You have more flexibility, somewhat more flexibility with your time. You have a little more flexibility, maybe sometimes, with your pay. You can ask for a little more, but there are many disadvantages to that, perhaps more than advantages. And one of them, again, is pay. Uh, Even though it seems like you're getting paid a bit more than if you were a regular employee, in the long term, that is very clearly not the case, uh, because you're not getting a steady income. That's for one, and also they do tend to rip you off even with those gig jobs. There's a website called Field Nation that basically specializes in putting out these jobs out there and providing these a means for people, contractors, whatever, to apply or bid for these jobs. And the pay is quite meager. About 7 to 10% gets kicked back to Field Nation, which is the website ran probably by a handful of individuals. About 5 to 10% of that, of your pay, your total pay for that job, gets kicked back, especially if you have an insurance policy registered in the system. And again, your pay is both an advantage and a disadvantage. It's more flexible, that's the advantage. It's not steady, and you could also get ripped off. That's the disadvantages, a few of them at least. So again, I've experienced the way those jobs, those gigs work, and there's a lot of abuse even there. There's a lot of suffering There's a lot of red tape paperwork that's involved with those. There's a lot of, unreasonable demands from the people that are offering the gigs, just because they know, especially with the, advent of the internet and these websites that cater or offer these gig jobs, they know there's an army of individuals looking for gigs, and they are able, perhaps for the first time, to offer a lot less money, knowing full well that some individual out of the many thousands uh, is going to fall and is going to take the bait. And again, I've experienced that. I've been part of that for a good percentage of the last few years, about 4 or 5 years, since 2013, since I left my full-time employment. And even though you get a little bit more leadway or flexibility with your time, with what you do, the type of work you perform, you do, what you're involved with. Again, the abuse and the ripping off still remains. And again, I've experienced that it's a lot harder, just like many millions of us have in the last few years, to secure employment that is both fair in pay and treatment in benefits. It's a lot harder. There's a lot less positions out there, and the positions that remain are, again, the pay has not increased much at all in the last at least 2 decades. The benefits have just dwindled down to damn near non-existence, and again, the positions are just disappearing by the day. And I myself have experienced that over the years more and more. Even though my experience, my education, training levels have gone up, in some cases dramatically, over the last decade, I've noticed more difficulty in securing, that type of job that has fair pay, fair benefits, and fair practices, fair treatment for employees. Those jobs are just disappearing again, dwindling to oblivion by the day. And this is not just me. This is well reported, well documented. It's a well evidenced fact that many experts and researchers have reported on. Just search it and you'll find out how jobs are less likely now to be: 1, full-time; 2, fair paid; 3, with benefits, full benefits. And you'll be lucky if you get any decent or reasonable benefits at all. And again, they're temporary. Most jobs are temporary. Your full-time, permanent, the so-called permanent positions are going away fast. And I have noticed that. I've been involved in the aviation, electronics, electricity, maintenance field for many years. I was involved up until recently, and full-time employment for those positions are very few and far in between, and they are basically like unicorns, rare sights. And let alone full-time positions in that, let alone those positions with benefits, with reasonable benefits. Full coverage health insurance paid by the employer is basically something unheard of nowadays, to my experience. Uh, Pay rates approaching or a little bit over the 20s, $20 per hour for any kind of technical job is just something unheard of when in the late 1990s, when I first came into the workforce as a full-time employee. I remember knowing and talking to and meeting people that made about that much in today's money. It made about 20 some dollars per hour in today's money, having no college degrees, no long years of experience, none of that. It's just that they were able to land what they called a sweet job back in the day. And this is over 20 years ago. And I'm still hearing people bragging about getting paid their $20 on or around $20 an hour. I hear people bragging about this amount of money, which is quite meager when you take in consideration that I knew and met and hung out with people back in the day, back in the late 90s, making about that much money. And these were working folk. These were not even all wealthy folk. These were working lower middle class folk making that much back over 20 years ago. And this is in the South Florida area back in the late 90s, not necessarily a super mega super advanced area. It's not like it's LA or Chicago or Houston. I mean, this is South Florida back in the late 90s. It was not booming as it may have been in the mid 2000s or now maybe. It was just the average area, larger US city, or a larger US metropolitan area. It wasn't anything special. And today, 20 years after, you would expect to see a pay increase, according to the cost of living in every area, which has dramatically increased, not only with living arrangements like housing or apartments, but with food prices, gasoline prices. All that stuff has damn near gone up over 50 to 70%, if not 100%, over what it used to be around those days. Especially housing and food. That stuff is near double probably as it used to be back in those days 20 years ago. And yet your pay has stagnated at about the same, or at many if you consider the rarity of fair, not even fair pay, but okay pay jobs. The rarity, if you take into account the rarity of okay paid jobs, which are those $20 an hour jobs for just technical semi-skilled labor folks. You see people bragging about a meager $20 an hour today and the high cost of living that we live under right now. So I think this is quite pathetic, the way the economy has been going, and quite disturbing the way it is going, the way it is projected to go. And even though many in politics, especially those in power, say that they will change the economy won't change because someone says it is going to change or tries to change it. Policy can only go so far. The machinery of the free market and the economic system we live under, which is capitalism, is basically what drives the economy, and that will continue to drive the economy right now. And for the average worker here in the United States, is looking more and more stark and sad and disturbing by the day, because fair paid jobs are disappearing, but yet the cost of living remains increasing by the day.